Have you ever noticed how some people just seem to, well, effortlessly navigate life, achieving their goals, understanding others, while others seem to stumble, kind of repeating the same frustrating patterns?
Or how, despite all our modern advancements, all this technology, history still seems to echo itself.
Exactly. Especially when it comes to human behavior.
Definitely.
Today, we're embarking on a deep dive into Robert Greene's really profound work, Mastering the Laws of Human Nature.
Quite a book.
It really is. And it's not just, a collection of historical stories. Greene presents it as this powerful shortcut, a way to quickly grasp the fundamental drives behind why people act the way they do.
Using these incredible, fascinating stories to illustrate principles that feel, well, timeless. Often quite surprising, too.
Totally. Okay, let's unpack this a bit.
Well, what's fascinating here, I think, is Greene's core argument. He basically says that human nature is this incredibly powerful force.
More powerful than what?
Stronger than any single person, stronger than any institution we build, even stronger than our, most cutting-edge technology.
Wow.
And his point is, by really understanding these underlying laws, these patterns, you can gain a significant advantage.
Yeah.
You can navigate the world and all its complexities much more effectively.
And so on this deep dive, we're going to pull out some of the most impactful insights from the book.
Yeah, there's a lot there.
We'll explore why trying to directly argue with someone, why that almost always seems to backfire.
And how our emotions are constantly, maybe subtly, influencing every single thought we have.
Right, and why empathy can sometimes feel so elusive, so difficult.
The incredible, almost alchemical power of finding your purpose.
Yes. And finally, a truly transformative perspective that can maybe shift how you approach your entire life. Ready?
Let's do it.
So where do we even begin with understanding ourselves and others better? Greene argues we have to start with a really powerful, maybe often overlooked truth: human nature itself.
Right. He puts it very plainly. Human nature is stronger than any individual, than any institution or technological invention.
Think about that for a second. If you ever try to change someone's mind, you know how frustrating that can be.
Oh, yeah.
Does Greene suggest there's like a fundamental reason why trying to directly argue or lecture or, cajole someone usually just makes them dig their heels in even deeper?
Absolutely. He emphasizes that often people aren't even really responding to your words as much as they are to your energy, your demeanor.
So it's not just what you say.
Exactly. It's how you say it and the sort of emotional currents you're putting out there. It connects directly to this brilliant observation from the Russian writer Anton Chekhov.
What did Chekhov say?
He said, "Man will only become better when you make him see what he is like."
So direct argument doesn't achieve that seeing.
No, because the real challenge, Greene says, is that our emotions continually infect our thinking. They push us towards thoughts that just will please us, thoughts that soothe our egos.
And this emotional drive is so potent. You mentioned history repeating itself, like in financial markets.
Exactly. I mean, look at the patterns. Bubbles and crashes.
Right.
South Sea Bubble in 1720s, England's railway mania in the 1840s, 1929, 1987, 2008.
It just keeps happening.
It's the same human wiring, just, a different backdrop. As Greene puts it, progress and technology have not rewired us. They have merely altered the forms of our emotions and the type of irrationality that comes with them.
So if our emotions are truly this powerful, this ingrained, how do we avoid being completely swept away by them? Does Greene offer a framework, a way to balance that core human emotional wiring?
He does, yeah. And it's a really timeless one, the ancient Greek metaphor of the rider and the horse.
Okay, rider and horse, how does that work?
So the rider represents skepticism, our thinking self guiding us, trying to direct things.
Okay.
And the horse, this curiosity, our emotional nature. It provides the energy, the power, the impetus to actually move forward.
I see. So you need both.
Precisely. The key insight here is that one without the other is useless. Without the rider, there's no directed movement, no real purpose. But without the horse, there's no energy, no power, just calculation without drive.
So what does this all mean? It means that rationality isn't just something we have naturally.
Not according to Greene. It's acquired. It's something you build through training and practice. Like Pericles, the Athenian statesman.
Right. You mentioned him. He trained himself.
Yeah. He consciously trained himself to never react in the moment, never make decisions when he was under the influence of a strong emotion. It's about developing that conscious effort to guide that powerful emotional energy, the horse.
Okay. Building on that idea of self-mastery, if we want to understand others better, Greene makes this really compelling case about transforming what he calls self-love into empathy.
Hmm.
He suggests we're all, to varying degrees narcissists. We all have this deep, maybe unending need for attention and validation. What's the root of this, according to him, and how does it manifest?
Well, he points out that our self-image, the story we tell ourselves about ourselves, it naturally accentuates the positives and kind of explains away the flaws.
Sure, that makes sense.
And crucially, the key moments for constructing this self often happen really early, between the ages of, say, 2 and 5.
Wow, that early.
Yeah. And this helps explain why some people who Greene terms deep narcissists struggle so much more. Maybe due to early abandonment or maybe enmeshment where boundaries weren't clear.
Mm,
They lack a solid foundation for self-esteem.
what makes them?
It makes them hypersensitive,
Yep. Yeah.
prone to rage or really erratic behavior when their self-image is challenged. It's a profound insight into that underlying vulnerability.
That concept, it resonates so strongly with our modern world. You hear about studies showing this gradual increase in self-absorption in narcissism, particularly in young people since maybe the late 70s.
Right, with a much higher spike since around 2000.
Is technology a primary driver here? Does Greene suggest that?
He certainly suggests it's a major factor. I mean, think about it. Potentially less time spent in genuine face-to-face social interaction, more time online, curating a persona. It can make developing real empathy and those crucial social skills much more difficult. It's a real challenge for our time.
So for us then, for you listening, what's the practical step? How do we cultivate empathy in this kind of environment?
Greene is quite direct. He says to truly develop empathy, you have to actively, consciously cut off your incessant interior monologue, that constant chatter in your head.
Just switch it off?
We'll try to.
Yeah.
You have to give full, undivided attention to others. It's about actively listening, not just waiting for your turn to talk, but listening for understanding, genuinely trying to enter their world, their value system. It's a deliberate shift in focus away from the self.
And as we navigate these social interactions, it often feels like people are wearing, well, masks. Greene dives right into this.
Yeah.
He points out the word personality itself comes from the Latin persona, which means mask.
Right.
What's the significance here? Is it just a metaphor?
He argues it's much more than a metaphor, because so much of what we actually communicate isn't verbal at all.
Okay.
He brings up the psychologist Milton Erickson, who was interesting because, unlike a lot of psychiatrists at the time who focused just on words, Erickson focused intently on people's physical presence, their nonverbal communication.
Why was that so important?
Because he understood, apparently, that something like 65% of all human communication is nonverbal. But, and this is the key part, people pick up and internalize only about 5% of this information.
Only 5%?
Yeah. So Erickson was keenly aware of things like microexpressions, those little quick flashes on the face or body when people try to suppress a feeling, especially a negative one.
Like a flicker of anger.
Exactly. Or contempt or sadness. And he noted that hostile feelings often leak out when people are, say, drunk or sleepy or frustrated or really angry. The mask slips.
So these masks, these personas, they often hide what's really going on underneath. Does Greene then argue that beneath these layers we find something more fundamental, like character?
Precisely. He argues that people's character is formed way back in their earliest years, and also by their daily habits. It's built over time.
And how does it reveal itself?
Well, Abraham Lincoln famously observed, "If you want to test a man's character, give him power."
Ah, the power test.
Right. Greene suggests power doesn't really change people. It just amplifies who they already are. It reveals more, showing how they handle adversity, how they adapt, how they work with others. He uses examples like Howard Hughes Jr. or Lyndon Johnson, maybe even Joan Crawford.
And then there's that really profound concept from Carl Jung, The Shadow, our dark side. These are the insecurities, the aggressive impulses, the selfish bits we all possess, but we try to hide them, even from ourselves. They operate unconsciously.
Like Robert Louis Stevenson's Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Hyde is Jekyll's shadow, basically unleashed. Jekyll even says, "My devil had long been caged. He came out roaring."
That shadow sounds like something we'd want to just lock away and forget about. But Greene makes a surprising argument here, doesn't he? Here's where it gets really interesting. What's the actual power in confronting it?
Yeah, it's definitely counterintuitive. But Greene argues that by acknowledging these parts of ourselves, by actually confronting the shadow instead of denying it, we become more whole, more integrated.
How so?
Well, instead of letting that darker energy control us unconsciously, popping out in destructive ways, we can actually learn to channel it productively,
Yeah.
integrate it into our conscious lives. It's about achieving a kind of mastery, not just denial or suppression.
Okay, moving from the internal landscape to social dynamics. Let's talk about one of the trickiest, most elusive human emotions, envy.
Oh, yes, envy.
It's so subtle sometimes, but so destructive. Gore Vidal captured it perfectly, didn't he? That quip. Every time a friend succeeds, I die a little.
It's brutally honest. And history is just filled with examples, right? Cain murdering Abel out of envy. Joseph's brothers throwing him in a ditch because their father favored him. King Saul trying repeatedly to kill the younger David because he was jealous of his success and popularity.
It seems ancient, primal. How does it show up today?
Well, Greene argues it's actually more prevalent than ever before, largely because of social media, that constant comparison engine.
Makes sense.
And today, it's often expressed more indirectly through, say, gossip or anonymous online attacks or passive aggression.
So it's still destructive.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And people prone to envy rarely find satisfaction because they just transfer their hostility onto the next target. The best antidotes, Greene suggests, are first, profound gratitude for what you do have.
Okay.
And second, a conscious effort to transmute that envy into emulation.
Emulation, meaning
Meaning instead of wanting to tear others down, you use their success as inspiration, a desire to raise yourself up, making envy a spur to excellence, as he puts it.
turning poison into fuel.
Exactly. And having a strong, clear sense of your own purpose also acts as a powerful immunization against envy's sting.
That idea of self-worth or maybe self-perception is crucial because Greene also talks about the fragile ego and grandiosity. We have this deep, universal need to think highly of ourselves, right? But it often diverges from reality. It leads to what he calls a kind of low-grade grandiosity in most of us.
Yeah, this slightly inflated sense of self. We see more extreme versions in figures like maybe JFK or Coco Chanel, or even the dynamic between Michael Eisner and Jeffrey Katzenberg at Disney.
Right. And it's striking how external validation doesn't fix it. You mentioned Mary Shelley earlier.
Yes, wrote Frankenstein at 19, world famous, yet apparently deeply unhappy because of all the personal drama and constant gossip swirling around her. Fame didn't bring inner peace.
Is that why Greene argues we're maybe idealizing the self more than ever today? Because traditional anchors are weaker?
He makes a strong case for it. His argument is that in the Western world particularly, as traditional religions and sort of universal causes have lost some of their binding power for many people, that energy gets redirected towards idealizing the self, making the self the ultimate project, the ultimate source of meaning. And this, he says, makes it harder than ever before for any of us to maintain a realistic attitude and a proportionate sense of self.
That inward focus, that self-idealization, does that also make us more susceptible to what he calls the downward pull of the group?
It certainly connects. Eric Hoffer famously observed, when people are free to do as they please, they usually imitate each other.
Why are we so prone to groupthink? To that emotional contagion you mentioned earlier?
Well, we crave validation, belonging, certainty. And groups offer that, even if the certainty is, well, based on a delusion.
Like financial bubbles.
Exactly. Think about the South Sea stock bubble again, or the subprime mortgage crisis. People get swept up partly out of fear of missing out. And when everyone seems to validate the scheme, no matter how delusional, it becomes very hard to resist.
We even see it in well-meaning policies backfiring, right? Like the Cobra effect.
Oh, the classic example from Delhi.
Yeah.
The British government offered a reward for dead cobras to reduce the population.
What happened?
People started breeding cobras to kill them and collect the reward. Then, when the reward was scrapped, they released the now worthless snakes, and the cobra population actually tripled.
Wow. A perfect example of a short-term solution completely backfiring because they didn't see the bigger human nature picture.
Precisely. Or look at Prohibition in the U.S. in 1920. It was intended to stop alcoholism.
But it famously increased it, along with organized crime.
Exactly. The solution, Greene argues, is absolutely vital for navigating the modern world. To resist this pull, you must never relinquish your ability to doubt, reflect, and consider other options. He says, your rationality as an individual is your only protection against the madness that can overcap a group.
Maintaining that individual rationality, that skepticism, that sounds key to effective leadership, too. Which brings us to authority. How do you make people genuinely want to follow you?
Hmm.
Greene describes authority as this delicate art of creating the appearance of power, legitimacy, and fairness while getting people to identify with you as a leader who is in their services.
It's a nuanced definition, not just brute force.
Not at all. He uses Queen Elizabeth I as a fascinating case study. I mean, she inherited a kingdom drowning in debt, facing potential civil war, plots against her life, even from her own cousin, Mary, Queen of Scots. How did she build such lasting authority?
Well, crucially, she did it not through entitlement, not just because she was queen, but through her actions.
Hmm.
She was apparently a master negotiator, famously frugal with state money,
Which people respected.
immensely. And she consistently projected that she was working for the greater good of the country, not just her own power. Her authority was built on what Greene identifies as the twin pillars of authority: vision and empathy.
Vision and empathy. Tell me more about the empathy part for leader.
He stresses it has to be visceral,
Hmm.
felt by the people. A leader's attitude, their mood, their tone, is constantly being observed and critiqued. He argues your authority ultimately must emerge naturally from your character. It's about who you genuinely are, not just the role you play.
And underlying that character, perhaps the strongest defense against that downward group pull and maybe the best antidote to envy is finding a profound sense of purpose, a calling.
Yes. Friedrich Nietzsche famously said, "He who has a why to live can bear with almost anyhow."
That's powerful. And you see this in so many impactful figures, right? Martin Luther King Jr., Steve Jobs, Einstein, even Ingrid Bergman, perhaps.
Absolutely. Individuals who found this deep sense of fulfillment by connecting to a mission, something that felt deeply personal, something that couldn't really be taken away by external circumstances.
What's the relevance for us today, especially if, as you said, some traditional sources of purpose have faded for people?
Well, Greene suggests that in a world where those old support systems, maybe traditional religions or overarching universal causes, have weakened for many, people can easily lose themselves, fall into addictions, depression, a sense of meaninglessness.
So finding purpose becomes even more critical.
He argues yes. He points to historically vibrant cultures like ancient Athens, the Chinese Sung Dynasty, the Italian Renaissance, maybe the 1920s in the U.S. These are often periods that encouraged internal diversity, individuality, creativity.
So the call is.
The call is to cultivate what is unique about you, find that inner inclination, and then to embrace what he terms essential servitude.
Essential servitude, what does that mean?
It sounds odd, but it means finding purpose in dedicating yourself, your unique talents, to something larger than your own ego, something transcendental perhaps. Like Leonardo da Vinci, whose personal motto was apparently relentless rigor, seeing his life's work as a mission to serve mankind through understanding and art.
That's a really powerful idea, turning your unique gifts into service for something greater. Okay, to kind of bring all these insights together, Greene encourages us to elevate your perspective.
Get above the immediate fray.
Exactly. He suggests most humans are kind of locked in the present moment, like living right at the base of a mountain with a really limited, maybe skewed vision.
Right. You only see what's right in front of you.
Yeah. And the passage of time, he says, is like the slow ascent up the mountain.
Yeah.
As you get higher, you see more, you gain more information, more wisdom, a broader view.
But our wiring fights against that, doesn't it? That short-term thinking.
It seems so. He argues short-term thinking is hardwired into our systems. We're built for instant gratification.
Which explains why we instinctively focus more on immediate threats, like terrorism, than maybe more distant abstract threats like global warming.
Plausibly, yeah. Or why people continue self-destructive behaviors like smoking. The immediate pleasure outweighs the distant, uncertain pain for many. It reminds me of that Ralph Waldo Emerson quote.
Which one?
The years teach much which the days never know. It's a call to consciously broaden our temporal scope, right? To
Right.
think longer term.
Absolutely. And expanding on that, it's not just about time, it's also about how our attitude, our internal state, can genuinely change our circumstances, or at least how we experience them.
How so?
Our perception of reality is always our personal version, isn't it? It's shaped constantly by our moods, our emotions. Carl Jung put it beautifully. Attitude is a readiness of the psyche to act or react in a certain way.
And Anton Chekhov, the writer you mentioned earlier, is a key example here.
Greene uses him as a paradigm.
Yeah.
Despite having a difficult early life, traumas, hurts, Chekhov apparently learned over time to embrace this generous spirit, to stop reacting so personally to everything.
What did that achieve for him?
It freed his mind, freed his energy for higher pursuits, for his writing, for observation. The challenge for you, for all of us listening, is, as Greene puts it, to get rid of the natural tendency to take what people do and say as something personally directed at you.
That sounds difficult, but freeing.
Incredibly freeing. He argues you will save yourself from accumulating hurts and bitter feelings. This also connects to what Greene calls controlled aggression, or maybe just willpower, resilience. Think of Hannibal's famous motto.
I will either find a way or make a way.
Exactly. It's about persistently attacking problems, maybe from new angles, with that kind of mental toughness and adaptability, not just giving up when things get hard.
And as we gain this kind of elevated perspective, this resilience, we become more attuned maybe to seizing the historical moment, recognizing the shifts happening around us.
That seems to be the idea. Greene notes nothing in human life is ever static. There is always discontent below the surface and hunger for change. Things are always in flux.
We are products of our times, definitely. But he challenges us to do more than just float along, right?
Yeah, he says we must adapt the past to the present spirit and resurrect the spirit of childhood.
Resurrect the spirit of childhood. What does that mean in this context?
Maybe that openness, curiosity, flexibility. Blending our hard-won experience with the values and energy of new generations. The goal is to become an unusual and appealing hybrid. Someone who bridges past, present, and future.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it's about staying relevant, staying alive to the changes.
And contributing meaningfully to them, not just being shaped by them passively. It requires constant learning and adaptation.
Okay. And finally, maybe the most profound way to elevate perspective, to live with purpose, is something quite stark. Meditating on our common mortality.
Confronting the ultimate endpoint.
Greene shares the incredibly powerful story of Mary Flannery O'Connor, the great American writer. She faced an early death sentence, lupus and rheumatoid arthritis, diagnosed young, died at 39, same disease as her father. But she chose to accept it. What did that acceptance bring her?
According to Greene's interpretation, it filled her with this intense sense of purpose, urgency. She focused incredibly intensely on her writing in those final years. She described it almost like a religious-like experience of losing the ego, just pure focus on the work, making the most of every single moment she had left.
That leads to what Greene calls the paradoxical death effect.
Yes. The paradox is that by denying death, by pushing it away, we actually feed our anxieties. We become sort of death-like from within, living fearfully constricted.
But by confronting it.
By connecting to the reality of death, we connect more profoundly to the reality and the fullness of life now. He says the specter of death impels us toward our fellow humans and makes us avid for love. It encourages us to embrace pain and adversity as part of life, and maybe opens the mind to the sublime, to experiences beyond the everyday.
Wow. We have covered so much ground today in this deep dive into Robert Greene's Mastering the Laws of Human Nature.
We really have.
From understanding those powerful emotional drivers, how we perceive ourselves, that whole rider and horse dynamic.
Right, through mastering social dynamics, the masks, the character, the shadow, envy.
Finding purpose, resisting the group pull, developing authority.
And finally, embracing our shared human condition, even mortality, as a source of meaning and connection.
It's truly a journey from theory deep into practice, isn't it?
Absolutely. This understanding, it isn't just academic. It's intended as a direct path to greater effectiveness, maybe more fulfillment, deeper connection in your own life. It's really about seeing the world, and maybe more importantly, seeing yourself with clearer eyes.
And as we wrap up this deep dive, here's maybe a final thought for you to mull over. Perhaps that constant human desire we seem to have to escape or deny these core aspects of our nature, our powerful emotions, our tendency towards grandiosity, even the simple fact of death, perhaps that very denial is precisely what prevents us from truly thriving, from living fully.
It's a challenging thought.
So ask yourself, what stands out to you about how these timeless laws of human nature show up in your own life? Right here, right now, today. Maybe the deepest dive isn't just into the sources, but ultimately into ourselves.